So, Model View Controller, or MVC, is a way of formatting coding projects so that you have only one main thing, the model, which is kind of like, to analogize it to a human, it's the nerves, because the nerves are what communicates with all the different parts of the body. So the controller communicates with both the view and the model, which are two separate parts, they're two separate classes, and they don't really communicate. So what the controller does is it takes the input from the view is the interaction, so when you're looking at the user will be looking at the view, all the different fields, buttons, etc., and the user will input into the view, say this is a payroll program, right? The user will input how many hours they worked, and they'll click submit, and they'll say the date or whatever. And the controller will take that information, and they'll say, okay, so Jim worked 10 hours, Jim is the CEO, so there's a CEO button, and so what do I do with that information? And so it then goes to the model, and the model is the brain. So it'll say to the model, hey, I have a bunch of information. I have Jim, I have CEO, and I have 10 hours. And so the model will say, okay, let's check to see if I have anything for CEO, because that's not an integer or anything, so I have to check any of my classes. And for this example, you'll have, say, an employee main class. And then in the types of employees, you'll have a CEO, a vice president, a normal employee, and say a janitor, right? And it'll check and say, okay, so we have a CEO, and the CEO has one main thing. And that one main thing is the hourly rate. And so what you do is, it'll take, in the model, it'll take that hourly rate, and since you also gave it the amount of hours, you'll have a function that multiplies the amount of hours by the hourly rate, and the brain will say, okay, cool. So now I have this value, say it's 100, 10 hours, 10 bucks, I mean that's a lot of money for me, so. It'll have 100. Now what do I do with it? It'll return it, because say it's an integer function, or a float function, and it'll return it to the controller, and the controller says, cool, now that I've received this information from the model, I can give it to the view so that the user can see it. So then it'll take the $10 or $100 and return it to the view in one of the view's specific sections, such as a JText field or whatever, and then the view will be able to show the user. So the main thing is that the view and the controller interact on one path, and the controller and the model interact, but the controller is what determines what kind of interaction happens between these two in terms of data.